Japan is no longer the world's third largest economy, and it is officially in recession. Its GDP contracted to 4.2 trillion US dollars, or about 591 trillion yen in 2023, falling behind Germany, China, and the US at the top spots.
もちろん感じてますよ。やはりもうお客様の買い物の仕方が変わっていると感じますね。
Japan's economy shrank by 0.4% in the fourth quarter of 2023, the second consecutive contraction that has worried some economists.
過去、景気後退だった2018年とか2012年とか、その時も GDP が2期マイナス連続で、になっているので、極めて成長率は低いということがわかると思います。
Is Japan's economy tanking? Japan's rate of development was touted as an economic miracle. The country rose from the ashes of World War II to become the second largest economy through the 1970s and 1980s.
Japan started out with a classic export-based model, and it basically created the model that pretty much all of certainly developing East Asia has used to, basically rise up the income scale. To this day, you have economies in this region, South Korea being one, Taiwan being another, Singapore being another.
Wealth rapidly accumulated in Japan, with the most successful firms snatching up real estate in the U.S., buying buildings like the Rockefeller Center and the Empire State Building.
The 1980s, Japan had risen to a level of development and business acumen that, myself growing up in the U.S., Japan was a bit of a source of fear for corporate America. In many ways, I think a lot of Americans felt that they were playing catch up to the Japanese economy and how innovative and how competitive it was.
The economic boom seemed too good to be true, and eventually it was. Near the end of the 1980s and through the following decade, its bubble economy burst and its GDP contracted.
In many ways, it was this asset bubble of sorts that had been created over decades. Very easy money from the Bank of Japan, stock market rising, land prices rising, and finally that hit a wall in the late 1980s. In the 1990s, Japan spent a lot of time trying to dig out from under this bad loan crisis in the banks that was a side effect of the bubble economy exploding.
The Japanese economy grew only 1.1% on average annually from 1991 to 2003. Pretty dismal compared to the average 3% growth seen throughout the 1980s.
Even today, there are a lot of side effects Japan has continued to grapple with when it comes to moving past this 1990s debt reckoning that Japan had. And now, for better or worse, it's become a bit of a development model for the region, but also a cautionary tale.
So what happened over the course of 30 years since its initial descent? Experts blame the weakening of the Japanese currency, the yen.
これは為替レートの要因、2023年平均した時の為替レートが1ドル140円50銭。そういう意味ではですね、歴史的な円安が、円の価値を小さくしてしまっているというのが、ドイツに抜かれた結構大きな要因になっているんですが、
Tokyo has intentionally weakened the yen to boost exports, hoping to beat the rate of deflation. The late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe came up with a set of economic policies in 2012, so-called Abenomics, which also involved easing currency rates to balance deflation.
そのキーワードは3つです。挑戦、チャレンジ、海外展開、オープン、そして創造、イノベーションです。
But Pesek said Tokyo's artificial inflation was unable to address the underlying problem.
It's been trying to create inflation. And now that Japan is getting some inflation, consumers are not enjoying it. And the problem Japan has right now is that it's sort of like the dog that caught the car, in the sense of, we have the inflation we've been looking for all these years, but now it's actually affecting consumers in a negative way.
Prices of domestic goods like fuel and electronics have risen over time. Who's been the most affected? Consumers.
お仕事のお給料が少なくなってしまっていて、なのでお洋服とか外食とかもちょっと節約で買わなくなったり行かなくなりました。
ガソリンと電気代が高騰してるんで、石油ファンヒーターに変えたり、車にあまり乗らないようにしています。
最近は結婚したばっかりなので、節約と健康のためにお家で食べるように心がけてます。
As a result of the rising cost of living, Japan has another issue to contend with: falling birth rates and a rapidly aging society. Figures show 36 million people in Japan are now 65 or older, with about 1 in 10 people aged 80 or above as of September 2023. Pesek says that is only bad news for Japan's economy.
It's certainly the background music playing around all of us at the moment. One of the things that Japan reminds us is that when you have an aging and shrinking population, it's somewhat inherently deflationary in that people who are in their 70s and 80s do not spend the way people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s do.
An aging population combined with strict restrictions on foreign labor has also caused a labor shortage. Inflation, a weakening yen, and an aging population, all factors contributing to a higher cost of living. What's the path forward to recovery?
What we really do need, and what we've needed for 20 years now, is significant structural reforms, steps to loosen labor markets, steps to increase innovation and productivity, steps to allow more startup companies not only to be created, but more importantly, to grow into mid-sized companies and large companies, steps to empower women, but also steps to remind Asia that Tokyo is an important financial hub.
Despite living with an economic recession, Japan remains one of the world's most prosperous countries, with a strong influence on geopolitics and culture.